So you are very welcome to this English lecture tonight. And it is about forgiveness, as you can see. So, of course, forgiveness, that is something that you all know about. And probably you have tried to practice it. And you have heard that it's very important to forgive. But we also know that it's very difficult to forgive. So I will talk tonight about how we can forgive and why it is a logical thing to do, and actually something that will bring us closer to the real human kingdom. Let's start off with some quotation from some famous people. Let's see what Gandhi said. He said, "The weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is the attribute of the strong." So sometimes people say, oh, it's a sign of weakness that you forgive. You shouldn't forgive. You have to fight back. But actually, Gandhi says the opposite. It's actually a sign that you are strong and that you have a purpose with what you're doing. And Gandhi, he was, he got some inspiration from Tolstoy. And Tolstoy said, "Let us forgive each other, only then will we live in peace." So that is also something I will talk about here tonight, that forgiveness is one of the most important things for us to be able to form a kingdom of peace on this planet. And then we have Oscar Wilde. "Always forgive your enemies. Nothing annoys them so much." Well, maybe he didn't really get it, but at least he's funny, so we can forgive him, can't we? So let's move on to this man, and we all know who he is, because probably Jesus is the most famous person on this planet. Well, I know that the Beatles once said that they were more well-known, but I'm not really sure about that. So before Jesus was put on the cross, he had been wandering on this planet, and he had preached about love and forgiveness. And there were many people coming to his lectures, and many people wanting to follow him. But would there really have been Christianity? Would there have been this influence on our civilization if it wouldn't have been for this moment? Because he's on the cross, and he must be in terrible pain. He's suffering. He's about to die. And at that moment, he says, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." And of course, that was something that made an impression upon people. People in those days, they had come to a point where they were becoming a bit tired of violence and fights and sorrows and suffering. So there was a possibility to be impressed and to be inspired by something else. So they couldn't really understand it, but actually what they were inspired of was a new peace kingdom. It was a totally new way of being. So somehow they were really touched in their hearts by what Jesus said. And I would say this is a turning point in our history. This is where the new world impulse started. And it has led us all the way up to where we are today. So it's actually forgiveness that was the turning point of the old world impulse. But it is also what will carry us on to the real human kingdom. And of course, this was something totally new, because in the Old Testament, there was this concept of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And that was something that was quite natural to people, that if someone did something to you, then you had the right to do the same thing to the other person. And of course, we can see that today Also, when we see small kids playing, for example, we can see that someone is saying, "Oh, he hit me, then I can hit him." It's like a natural state of justice for people. But of course, it's not only small kids who use an eye for an eye. Well, many things that we see on this planet, like we see wars and aggressions, the economic system and so on, isn't it a lot built on this principle? So in a way, we haven't reached what Jesus taught us 2,000 years ago. And Martinus is actually teaching us the same things today. So already in the first volume of the Book of Life, Livets Bok, he talks about non-forgiveness, which is, I guess, a word that he has sort of invented, but we can all understand what it means. And here is what he says. Every time they forgive him, however more or less serious the annoyance he may have caused them, they free themselves from one of the sandbags, the weight of which in the form of non-forgiveness keeps them tied to the lower and less developed planes of existence, and from where, to the same degree as these sandbags have been released, they can more and more freely and unhindered lift themselves up to lighter and happier planes and regions of existence before the eternal throne. So Martinus, he says here that when we don't forgive, it's like carrying a sandbag. It's something that makes us heavy, and it keeps us on the lower planes. And when we forgive, that is the time when we can develop and we can get up to the lighter and happier planes. We could say that forgiveness is one of the most important things in what Jesus called neighborly love, and what Martinus would call real love, which is, as he says, the keynote of this universe. So this universe is really ruled by love. That's the basic law, the basic structure that builds up this universe. So let's see what Martinus says about neighborly love. Neighborly love is the most elevated factor in the living being's psyche, and therefore, to absolutely the same extent, must be the most elevated and most essential object for human research. So here Martinus says we have to study neighborly love. We have to study forgiveness in order to reach the real human kingdom. And of course, there are many complicated subjects that we can study today at the university. We could study mathematics and biochemistry, and there are lots of tricky things to learn. But probably we could become an expert in those fields in a couple of lifetimes. But when it comes to neighborly love and forgiveness, well, it hasn't really happened during these 2,000 years. So we can see that this is the most difficult subject that we can study. So we really have to put our effort into this. And that was from the Book of Life, Volume 5. I said in the beginning that people might think today that it's a sign of weakness to forgive, that it's sort of letting people go without having any punishment. So we could ask ourselves, when should we forgive? Who should we forgive? And then I'm going back to the Bible and to Jesus. And it's about what Peter asked Jesus. So then Peter came to him and said, "Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me, and I forgive him? Up to 7 times? A good try." And then Jesus said to him, "I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. So 70 times 7, well, it's a lot. And Martinus, he explains this, and he says that what Jesus actually wanted to say is that we should always forgive. There is no one and no situation where we shouldn't forgive. So if we look at our evolution and the spiral cycle, and of course this is the main symbol, then I think we all know that we have come from the mineral kingdom, and we have been plants and animals. And we are now terrestrial human beings, this kind of mixture of animal and human beings, and we are moving towards the cosmic consciousness. So actually here at the end of the animal kingdom, we have to actually study neighborly love, and that is what we are doing here at Klint. And we are also practicing. So we are practicing forgiveness and being loving to each other. It is, of course, not so easy always to forgive. But when we don't forgive, when we don't accept, what does it really mean? Isn't it the same as saying, God, your plan is not the right one? It's like complaining about the way that God has created this world. So when I'm not accepting someone, when I'm or a situation, and I think, this shouldn't have happened to me, I don't want it to be in this way, then I'm actually complaining to God that God hasn't created the world in the right way. And believe me, being up against God, you won't win the fight. So it's really the way that we have to train right now to accept what is happening to us. If we look at this passage a little bit more in close detail, then we can see that, well, we've been minerals and plants, and here we are animals, and here we are, Martinus says that we are in these two fields right now. So, of course, there are many, many different steps on this evolution, and everybody is exactly at the step where they can be. Because of what we have experienced, because of what we have been through, we are exactly at the right point. So there is nothing and nobody that is wrong in this universe. It is quite tricky sometimes this is a bit tricky with this thing as well. It is quite tricky sometimes to forgive people who are in these sections. But on the other hand, for example, it's quite easy to forgive animals and plants. We never complain about the roses having thorns. We don't tell the roses, you shouldn't have thorns because they scratch me. No, we just accept plants as they are. And animals, I guess many of you have pets at home. Let's say that you have a cat or a dog at home, and then you might be cooking some food, and you put it on the table, and you walk out of the room, and when you come back, the cat or the dog is there eating. And of course, you get a little bit annoyed with them. You get a bit angry. But it's not like you think, oh, this terrible dog, he should understand this. Well, you might, but normally you can actually forgive your animals. Because you just think that, that's the way a dog is. That's the way a cat is. It's not to be changed. They don't have the capacity to understand the situation. So it's very easy for us to forgive animals. And also small kids. Small kids can do just anything and we think it's okay. Then slowly, step by step, we teach them how to behave in a civilized society. But we just accept them as they are when they are really small, because we know that's the step they are on. But when we meet grown-ups, we sort of expect everybody to also be as grown up as you are yourself. But people can be on many different levels and on many different steps. So what is natural for yourself might not be natural for someone else. And that is also something we have to learn through our evolution, to be able to see, how can I meet this person in the best way? How can I communicate? And we can't always take it for granted that people will be behaving in the way that we expect people to do. So it is also important, because now I'm going through the logical reasons for why forgiveness is something good and why it is the best thing for us. And another reason for that is, of course, the law of karma. Because everything I meet in this lifetime, this is a lifetime, and here are the arcs of fate, the arcs of karma coming to me. And everything I can reap, everything I can encounter in this life, it's something that I have made before. So all of my life is just a reflection of what I have done before. It's a kind of mirror. And it's really no idea to be angry with the ones which brings the message back. It's like being angry with a postman because he's bringing a bill. But, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the postman. It's you yourself who bought something and then you get the bill. So what we experience in daily life is a kind of, it's like the bills coming back. But of course, in some of these bills, there is also money, it's also love. So it's not only bad things coming back, it's of course also good things. But what we meet in our lives is there for us to understand who we are. So actually, we can be very thankful for people doing things to us, even people harming us and making us frustrated and annoyed and so on, because they will actually showing parts of myself, so I can learn not to be in that way in a situation the next time. So the law of karma is, of course, very, very important here. Then we can ask ourselves, what is forgiveness? Because, as I said, it has nothing to do with weakness. It has to do with accepting the person, with accepting, just as we do with the dogs and the cats. We accept them and we love them, even though they are cats and dogs and don't understand so much. And in the same way, we can also do that with persons. But of course, there are situations where we have to protect ourselves. There are situations where we might have to run away or even report it to the police and so on. So, using forgiveness, it doesn't mean that we just allow someone to hit us over and over again. No, of course, we have to protect ourselves and do the best in the situation. But afterwards, we can still think, okay, this person was doing it because that was the best that person could do. It might mean that we won't meet that person. We will see to it that we won't meet that person any longer. So we have the possibility to protect ourselves, of course. But still, it's the act that we are protecting us from. We can still accept and forgive the person. And Martinus also says that the highest form of yoga we can do is actually sending love and light to persons that we have problems with. So that he says we can do it to our enemies. I don't know if I have so many enemies, but of course, for example, in my job, I have had conflicts, and I have seen that it really helps to pray for people and to send them love and light. It takes time, but eventually it will make it so much easier to become friends and to work together again. So this is really a good form of training. And if you do it, you will notice that it's quite difficult. The first time you try and send love to someone with whom you're in conflict with, then you might just do it for 10 seconds, and then you start thinking about something else. So it's really a good way for us to learn to concentrate. So this then is what happens when we are using non-forgiveness, when we are not forgiving someone. And we can see here that here is some bad karma coming back to us. Someone is hitting us, and we are just hitting back. So this is revenge. We're just doing something bad. And of course, in this situation, that might just be an automatic instinct, because we have these instincts from the animal kingdom to just hit back. But in the long run, we can also see behind here what kind of situations it will create. We can see war and catastrophes and just a terrible society. So when we use revenge, and also another way of reacting to someone hurting you is to become a victim. And then you think, I'm a victim, it's all his or her fault. And it might make you bitter. So bitterness, Martinus says, and staying with resentment within yourself can be something that is really dangerous to your body. It can actually make you sick. So he explains somewhere that, for example, cancer can be caused by bitterness. So not forgiving is actually something that poisons you. It doesn't only create a very violent world, it also creates violence inside your body. And of course, carrying around resentment will also make you very depressed, and so on. So, and I think we could also use this symbol because it also shows what's happening when we don't forgive. So here we could say that we have two persons that fight each other, that argue, they don't like each other. So we can see these rays of gravity coming out from them. And here we have God, and we have God's love and light shining out onto the world. But because of these rays here, this gravity, this love from God cannot reach them. So actually, we are always surrounded by love. We are always surrounded by the highest form of spirituality and all the highest thoughts there are. But we cannot reach them because our own level is not at the same level. It's not the same frequency as God is radiating. So we have to change our own frequencies. We have to work with love. That is the way that we can get into contact with all the laws of cosmos, and we can also see how we can evolve. So you could say that Martinus calls this symbol intolerance. So it shuts us out from love and also from this feeling of unity, of being together. And I'm coming back to that because this feeling of separation is also something that causes us a lot of pain. So we know that today we are this mixture, this sphinx. We both have some humanity, we are working on that, but we also still have the animal qualities, like we can be aggressive and intolerant, and we can be very much ashamed and afraid and so on. So that's part of the animal inside of us. And that is something that is still there from us going through the animal kingdom. And there we trained a lot. So we trained a lot actually for self-preservance. Just to stay alive, we had to be angry. We had to be we we had to be very fast and run away sometimes, or we had to be like a tiger in a way. So actually we have a tiger within ourselves, all of us, and it looks nice. But in the next moment, it might just attack an animal and just eat it. And it doesn't have any bad feelings about that. So how can we handle the tiger within ourselves? The tiger that we were sort of feeding for a long time. We wanted to be as aggressive, and you could say that this animal side is what today is materialism and wanting to have power and money and so on. So how can we work with our inner tiger? Well, as I said before, it's no use to fight God, and I think there is no use to fight a tiger either. But maybe we can stop feeding it. So I think that what we can do is to really acknowledge the side inside of ourselves. We don't have to be afraid of it, because it's actually something that is very natural. So when I see that I'm becoming irritated, the best thing might not be to suppress it, but I can instead just look at that irritation, and I can ask myself, is this the best reaction? Maybe I can react in another way. And in this way, we sort of stop feeding the tiger, and it will become a cat. It will be less and less the driving force within ourselves. So step by step, we could say that a tiger inside of ourselves will die. But how do I actually do to forgive? And we said before that we should forgive in all circumstances and everybody. But isn't it also very important to forgive ourselves? So how then can I forgive myself? Well, we have been through some analysis now, and we can say that where I am, I'm the logical result of my experiences. I can't be on any other step. I've gone through this and that, and that's the reason why I am where I am. So nothing is wrong in the universe, and I'm always doing my very best. So actually, there is no reason why I shouldn't forgive myself. There might be many things that we are not really pleased with when it comes to ourselves. We might not like the way we look, or we might think that we should have been able to have a better job, or earn more money, or get a more beautiful partner or something. People are not really satisfied with themselves because it looks so easy. It looks like, oh, this person could do this, why can't I do it? But actually the reason why I can't do it is quite often that I don't have the experiences. I haven't trained enough, even though it looks easy. Well, when you know something, it always looks easy. So that's the reason why it looks easy. But we have to understand that we are where we are, and we must bear with ourselves and accept who we are. So instead, we can use thankfulness. We can be thankful for the qualities that we have. So if I really like myself instead, if I think, okay, I can't do that, but actually I can do this and that, and I'm quite good at this, and so on, it will make it so much easier for life to put us in the right place, where we can actually make use of our qualities. But still, there is a cross to carry for all of us. And with this, I mean, like with Jesus carrying his cross, we also have to go through pain and difficult times and lots of things. But we can also be thankful for that, because without that pain and suffering and difficult times, how could we develop? We would just be stuck at the same step in evolution. And the same goes with other persons. we also have to allow them to go through pain and suffering, because that will actually lift them. Well, I don't mean that we shouldn't help. We should always help out when it is possible. But it is not possible to take all pain away, because then there will be no development. Ultimately, we could say that forgiveness is something that makes us free. And there is this story about two monks in Tibet. And, they were persecuted, so they were put in prison. And they were suffering a lot. So they stayed in prison, and they were being tortured. Well, in the end, they were released, these two monks, and they got separated. But then after some years, they met again. And the first monk said to the other, "Well, how are you these days? Have you been able to process what happened? Have you been able to forgive those who put us in prison?" And the other monk, he said, "No, I will never, ever forget what they did to me or to us. It was so terrible." "Okay," said the first monk, "so I can see that they still keep you in prison." So forgiveness is the key to being free, because Martinus says that we are eternally, or for a very long time, connected to the persons we love, but also to the persons that we hate or with whom we have problems. We will get back to each other over and over again until we can love each other. So it's really no use not forgiving someone, because that situation will keep coming back until you can free yourself of it. Now, in this process of forgiving, we have some energies that we can use. And we know that we are here in the animal kingdom, and we can see that we still have a lot of gravity. But there is also feeling, and here is intelligence. And when we study Martinus, we use our intelligence, and we can understand that there is logic behind everything. And we can also understand that it's very logical to forgive. But isn't forgiveness also about feeling? Isn't it an emotion? Shouldn't we feel it in our hearts as well, that we are forgiving? Well, someone has said that the distance from the brain, from the head, from the brain to the heart is the longest distance there is. So it is really difficult to connect the heart and our intellect. But so some people, of course, can achieve forgiveness through their compassion, because they have been through suffering, and others can achieve it through their intellectual capacity. And so we have both of these types of persons, you could say. Some people have more of intelligence, and some people have more of emotions. And of course, in our society today, we sort of worship intelligence. Intelligence is the best thing, because then you can create science and you can make money and so on. But on the other hand, we could say that emotion is also very important, and it's growing very much within us. And it's actually the energy that will culminate in the real human kingdom. So Martinus says something about emotion and intelligence when it comes to forgiveness. He says, "True forgiveness is that which is given with both one's reason and one's heart, and in this way has united both fighting parties in true sympathy and love." So that is what we should really strive for, that we understand why we forgive, and we also feel compassion. But of course, it's not always possible to achieve that. So he also says, but theoretical forgiveness is better than no forgiveness at all. So it is actually a way to start forgiving. So as soon as something happens that is difficult, something that gives you pain or something that hurts you, you could at once start praying for getting the strength to forgive, and also being thankful because now some kind of karma has come back to you and you have the opportunity to change it into something else. So these are really, these are difficult moments, but these are the most important moments in a way in our lifetimes, because when we are hit by something bad, we can change it to something good, and then we are relieved from that karma. So, of course, if we look back at this combination of the basic energies, and well, I said we have a lot of gravity, and of course, our capacity to feel, it's like an instrument, we could say. And what we are learning now is to play that instrument with the right notes so that it sounds beautiful. But quite often, our emotional capacity is combined with our instinct and gravity, and then we have emotions like sorrow and anger and so on. And it might be that we have learned as small kids, I think I was taught in that way, that when there are difficult emotions, I just suppress it. Just let's pretend it's not there. But that isn't something that can, it's not a method that actually works, because somehow these emotions will come out, and quite often not in a good way. So we have to learn to listen to our hearts and to actually acknowledge what is there, because that's the only way that we can transform these emotions. And that transformation can be done with the help of intelligence, by asking ourselves intelligent questions. Is it really the right thing to do in this moment, and so on? And with asking us these questions, we can come to a point where we can forgive our feelings, because forgiving this is actually the fastest way of turning them around to something else. So we also have to forgive ourselves for who we are and where we have come from, and that there is nothing wrong with that. So Martinus says, the being's use of its intelligence in the service of either good or evil depends on the capacity that its humane faculty or sympathetic faculty has developed to supply. While intelligence can be developed through experience and teaching, humaneness cannot be developed through teaching. It can be developed solely through the experience of suffering. So we can see that we cannot force our emotional side. It has to come naturally through the suffering and pain we have. But intelligence is something that we are training all the time, when we are studying at school, when we are studying here, and so on. So we could say that forgiveness is actually the basis of neighborly love. To create this new kingdom that we are longing for, we have to use forgiveness. And forgiveness, it creates inner harmony. It frees yourself of all these heavy feelings that you've had before. And it also creates good health, and we said before that it's possible that you can get even sick from non-forgiveness. And of course, when you have an inner balance, and when you have a good health, and when you are thankful for who you are, then you become so much more creative. Then you get access to all that creativity you have within yourself, and it will be so much easier to find the right place in our society. So it brings creativity. And an important thing also for the new human kingdom is that we must build up friendships. In the past, we relied on romantic relationships, but we know today that they are not very stable, it's not very easy. And sometimes people just go away and they break up relationships, and it's really terrible and so on. But friendships, that's where we can really practice real love. So friendships, It's something that can hold for the whole life. We don't have to break up with our friends. We can just stay friends. And the friends are the ones that can really support us in difficult times. And of course, with forgiveness, we can also find this gratitude within ourselves, which is actually a point from which we can be very creative. But we talk here about neighborly love, and it brings me to the question of what is love? Well, I think we have read a lot about love. We have seen a lot of movies about love. We have heard a lot of songs about love, but it's mostly about romantic love, about the one-pole love. But Martinus talks about neighborly love, about real love. And what can it actually be? I said something before that we have the feeling today that we are separated from each other, and that makes us depressed. So in one article, Martinus says this. The article is Dying Cultural Factors. Life has one single meaning, and that is that life shall be united with life. And this union can take place only through love. So we can say that love is the feeling of being united with other human beings, of not being alone, and of recognizing that we are all part of God. And in another place, he says, this is the reason why this love in the beings gives rise to the need or desire to please and caress other living beings. It's in reality, albeit as yet unconscious for the beings themselves, a recognition of our eyes, identity with our fellow beings' eyes, and the divine kinship of our cosmic family connection with all living things. So we are actually a cosmic family. We are all raised from the same God, and right now we feel separated. But when we recognize the I in someone else, that is when we have this feeling of love. And I talked about pets before. And sometimes, maybe you are like me, that when I meet someone, I met a man here on the beach with a dog. And when I meet a dog, I have that urge that I want to sort of pat it a little bit and say hello to it. And we can see that the animals, they also want to say hello. So it's like I'm recognizing the I feel the kinship with that dog. However, I didn't do the same with the man. So we have a bit of a problem here that... Well, my recommendation is not just to live with pets, even if I've talked about them today. We have to get close to each other, but we are not really at the point where we want to caress everybody. But we can start with having loving thoughts and having good conversations and actually caring about people. So making a new friend feels good. And then the question is, how do we make new friends? Well, I think most of us who have come here to Klint, we have made many new friends. And probably that is, of course, because we are interested in the same thing, and that is a very good reason for making friends with someone. So having the same interests is essential. But another thing that brings us together here, I think, is also that we are on similar levels in our development. We have we have left the old world impulse, and we are longing for something else. So we are more or less on the same level. And those are the people with whom it's easiest to become friends, and actually also to have romantic relationships with. So in the past, we had maybe friendships because we could benefit from them. We could have a position or money, or we wanted something out of it. But to have a real friendship is wanting to give and also accepting that person exactly as he or she is, which means that a real friendship is forgiving whatever that person is doing. So the only way to have a friend is to be one. So we're coming here to this. We come here to this symbol where Martinus shows forgiveness, and of course we have also here some bad karma hitting us, but we don't hit back. We try and meet this in a loving way. We try to help out. So we can see that slowly through the lifetimes here, this karma is fading away, and there is good karma coming back to us instead. And of course, we can see also here that this behavior is the one that will create this new human kingdom. It's the Christ consciousness. And the more we can use forgiveness, the more we can be accepting in our daily life, the more we will be in contact with this keynote of the universe, which is love. And the more we are in contact with this keynote, the more we will understand from how life is functioning. The easier it will be for us to find our own path, and it will be easier for us to find friends and relationships and everything we need. And we will more and more get into a kind of life that what we need will come to us. And we are also prepared to give out what other people need. So this is a new kind of life where there is a flow of giving and receiving. And when some bad karma is coming back, we're trying to transform that into something good. So Martinus says, it has further shown me that love is the most powerful factor in all manifestation, in that to be a joy and blessing for everything with which one comes into contact is the only way for the individual to throw light on himself, on his divine Father, and on the existing world order. At the same time, it is the only thing that can liberate or lead him away from everything known under the concept of pain, and finally, that every individual's fate is built up from the effects of which he himself is the cause. So, I invite you to forgive. And now you know the reason for it. So now it's up to you to practice. And every time you practice it, you have taken a little step towards a totally new life, which is full of love and understanding, caring, and just having a very good time. Thank you very much.